workshop that Skilling Future is holding in 2025. Our workshop is going to be about AI-powered project-based learning, mastering the D.I.C.E framework. I am Sana Ilyas, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today as a strategic programs coordinator at Skilling Future. With over 14 years of experience, I've dedicated my career to transforming education through innovation, technology, and latestly through AI-powered learning. In my role as a lecturer and a course coordinator at FAST Islamabad, I work to integrate AI and critical thinking into my everyday learning, ensuring that my students are not only learning, but also being ready for the future. My journey has been enriched with multiple learning experiences from Vanderbilt University, specializations by IBM, and many more. At Skilling Future, my mission centers on designing strategic educational programs that create meaningful impact, leveraging emerging technologies, and working with my team to ensure that both educators and learners are able to have not only access to these technologies, but are also able to work really very well with them. Building collaborative networks to address global skill gaps, and creating learning ecosystems that prepare us for tomorrow's challenges. Because I believe that education isn't just about transformation. Today, I invite you basically to join me in reimagining what learning can be. Let me tell you a little bit about the amazing organization that I am a part of, that is Skilling Future. Skilling Future is a dynamic and forward-thinking organization that is committed to empowering educators, individuals, and communities through innovative learning experiences. At the moment, we are a team of 12 educators, innovators, and visionaries from across the globe who are working in different capacities within their educational settings. And they are working towards ensuring that as we move forth, we work towards designing programs, experiences, and things through which we can transform education by integrating AI, EdTech, and interdisciplinary project-based learning to provide innovative solutions. At Skilling Future, we understand that the future of work is rapidly changing and driven by emerging technologies like AI, automation, and digital transformation. That's why we focus on delivering high-impact programs that emphasize future-ready skills. And this series, workshop series, is basically just one of the part of what we are envisioning for the organization and how is it that we are providing value to individuals and communities going forth. Our approach basically is keeping in view leadership and global expertise. It is collaborative, strategic, and result-driven. That ensures that we are partnering with educational institutions, education leaders, and innovators to create scalable and impactful solutions. We are proud to lead the way in AI-powered learning innovations, global knowledge sharing, and transformational educational programs. We welcome you all on this amazing journey with us. Let me introduce you to one of our team members who is basically the workshop facilitator for today. It's my pleasure to introduce Joanne McGovern, our PBL Program Development Lead at Skilling Future, and a true innovator in educational technology. As the engineering hub manager at Future Education Northern Ireland, Joanne leads groundbreaking education industry projects and spearheads AI initiatives that are transforming the classroom experience. She is also the founder of AI Enthusiast Classroom, where she pioneers the integration of AI with creative teaching methods. And that, I believe, in today's world is really very important. Joanne joins us today, bringing her wealth of experience in developing dynamic PBL programs and her passion for empowering educators with cutting-edge technologies Her unique blend of technical expertise and educational innovation make her the perfect guide for today's workshop. Let me tell you a little bit about the workshop, which I'm really, really excited about. So thank you again, Joanne, for this workshop and being here with us today. Your expertise in both AI integration and PBL make you the perfect guide, actually, for this transformative journey that we are about to embark on. Today's workshop is all about revolutionizing education through AI-powered project-based learning. Over the next hour, we'll deep dive into practical strategies that will help you embrace the future of education. You'll not only discover how AI is reshaping our classrooms, but also learn to implement these strategies to enhance student engagement and learning outcomes. The highlight of today's session will be exploring the D.I.C.E framework, a more practical framework that Joanne has developed to seamlessly integrate AI into the PBL curriculum. Whether you're new to AI or experimenting with it in your classroom, this workshop will equip you with hands-on skill to apply immediately. We will be starting off with the session. Just wanted to let you know that we will be over the course of the workshop taking screenshots and pictures. So if you're not comfortable with having your picture or taken, you may not turn on your camera because we will be posting these images and screenshots on LinkedIn. Again, I welcome you all, and over to you, Joanne.
Thank you. And good morning, afternoon, wherever we're all joining from. This is the joys of since COVID that we can all meet from anywhere in the world. So what we're finding is project-based learning is being more and more talked about. We are hearing more of AI being brought into the classroom. We're hearing more about our students are cheating with AI, but it's how can we actually change our assessment? How can we change what we're doing in the classroom to support those learners, particularly those that do want to use AI and those learners that we want to ensure that are up to date. We don't want them getting left behind in a digital age. So in this session, the aim is that we can bring both AI and project-based learning together. So the AI tool that I'm going to be using today is NotebookLM. And the reason I've opted for NotebookLM is because it's an opportunity to share. It helps loads of students, particularly with an SEN or any students that maybe don't like talking to each other, because sometimes some of them like working in silo. But the good thing about NotebookLM, they can share their ideas together and share it across. So I hope throughout this session that I'll introduce the D.I.C.E framework and that you're able to get an idea behind how easy it is to apply that. There will be a few hands-on activities that will give you a chance to explore taking it into your classroom and applying that. And there will be a few questions and answering if anyone has that as well. So to get started, because I know on a Saturday everyone's busy, if you'd like to scan the QR code, so there's just one question on that QR code, and then we'll have a wee discussion around that. So the QR code is just to tell us one word about yourself. So the whole idea of this is so that I get to know you and maybe your journey is in PBL or with AI. So if you can scan the QR code and tell me one word about yourself. Sorry. I should get back up. One word about yourself. Sometimes this is the hardest question to think about. I'll give everyone a few minutes.
Joanne, do you have a link of this question as well? Some of the participants might not have access to QR code.
Yes. Sorry, my chat just disappeared there. Sorry, I've also put the link into the chat for everyone. Great. So dynamic, passionate, curious, forever learner. So yeah, especially on a Saturday, doing a workshop is definitely all of those hit the keywords. So I'll give everybody else a few minutes to add a few more in. So this is Mentimeter. If anyone has ever used it, it's a great wee tool, especially for project-based learning as well. So Mentimeter is, you can have word walls and you can bring the students all together to bring in their ideas and you're able to share it with them. So that's a nice wee, and we'll be using it later on. It's a nice wee tool for learners to use. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the next part. And please do any questions, just let us know. So why AI powered PBL and why are we thinking of it? In an era of today, it's so important for a number of reasons. So the digital era that we're in, we're hearing so much about AI. It's not disappearing as much as people would like to hope it is disappearing. It's so important that our students develop those skills that the workplace now needs, and PBL gives that opportunity for our learners to do that. AI is being talked about front and center. In a few years' time, it will be there. It will be involved in everything we do, much more than what it is now. We're all starting on this journey, and as everyone keeps reminding me, it's like a football game where we're about 4 minutes into a 90-minute journey, and it's so important that we do remember that, and we remember that for our students as well. What PBL and the AI part idea is that we can keep those skills developed, and we do develop those skills, but it's making it real. It's keeping it real life, and it's making it that we can take the learning that we have in the classroom for our learners, that we can take that out into the real world outside the classroom. I don't know about anyone else, but what I always get before I even started looking at project-based learning was, when am I ever going to use this? And particularly from an engineering background, you always get it when you're teaching maths. It's like, when do I need this in real life? When am I ever going to have to even think about this? So it's an idea around bringing it all together and bringing those skills together. So I have another QR code, and this time the QR code, and I'll put the link into the chat as well. The QR code is based on how you're currently developing those soft or human skills in assessment. And before we even think about how we can apply PBL in our classroom, it's so important to think of those skills, of how we can apply the human skills in assessment. So I'm just going to put the link in for our Mentimeter. And once you get on to Mentimeter, it's you never want to go back to anything else. And I'll just put that into our chat. So there's into the chat as well. So thinking about the skills development of that, thinking about that one skill, even an assessment that you would like your students to develop. What are those soft or human skills that you think is really important? I'm just going to share our responses. Yeah, interacting is so important, and keeping the dialogue between our students. And the great thing about PBL is it doesn't have to be in your classroom with the own students. It's a great opportunity to reach out to others in other countries and other curriculum areas that you can build an amazing project with, and it's showcasing that project. So open-ended discussions, collaborative activities, presentations, debates, self-awareness, problem solving. So what we like about Mentimeter is what the majority of people are saying always goes to the middle. Rapid solutions, brainstorming, exploring, and these are so important, and these are the things that AI can't do for us and can't do for our students. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have an opportunity to see how your students can develop on each of these. Would anyone like to come in at this stage and even chat about how you're developing some of these skills? Don't feel you have to. If anyone wants to discuss how they're developing their own skills or the skills in the classroom, or what you're finding most difficult. I know for me, my students hate teamwork. And unless I do a few bribes in there where I'm telling them they can get 10 minutes off early or off homework, is the way that we're getting them to actually do a wee bit of teamwork. So what we want to think about on that, and those are all the skills that we had on the Mentimeter that we're trying to develop. Someone did put this in, and it's critical thinking and ordinary thinking, and how the two of them are so important that we now start to think about how can we move across to our critical thinking. We have so much at the minute in terms of our ordinary thinking, our assessments. I know with some of the assessments that we have, it's very automatic, it's very automated, it's a habit. You have the pass, the merit, the distinction, you have different levels. There is slight bias depending on the topic that the student actually has and will have to do. And there's just that surface level of understanding. And where it's becoming more and more important is where we have to develop those critical thinking skills. And especially with using AI, and our students are all using it, we particularly need to develop those critical thinking skills and the logical questions so that our learners are asking the questions of if ChatGPT or Perplexity, and asking those questions going, is this actually correct? Is this the truth? And it's developing those critical thinking. It's exploring their alternatives. So a student might come up with an idea, and the great thing about PBL is it gives them an opportunity to explore. You don't just have to have that one project in the class. Yes, it can be difficult sometimes to manage, to make sure that students are meeting. Everything's not perfect, but it's once you get over the first part of it, I always find is the worst. It's always like a trough type thing in a graph where you hit the peak and it's like, yep, this is going really well. And then there's this absolute slump in project-based learning that you're thinking, where is this actually going? And students go off on a complete tangent. And I know, depending on the type of student that we have, they totally go off track, and it's bringing them back in to develop and think of alternatives, because some of them can have amazing skills. Some of them we find it difficult to get over the line and to think about it. So some of the things that to think about for your ordinary and critical thinking is the depth of understanding. So your ordinary thinking is your surface level, whereas we have the critical thinking, it'll be the in-depth. It gives the students the opportunity to explore and think about, can I do that in a different way? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be something as easy as storing your pens away. It could be something as easy as, I hate doing presentations, helping using this D.I.C.E framework to do that. It's looking at the approach. Our approach for students, as we all know, will be completely different depending on the age group, depending on the standard of our student. It will all be so different. So it's thinking of that. Do we want to have that critical thinking approach, which is systematic? Do we want it to be deliberate? So we really want students to develop these skills, but not actually realize what they're developing. The evidence, and one of the things we're going to go through today is looking at how we can apply this to your classroom. So in terms of evidence, it's when you're thinking of your critical thinking, students can come back and review it and look at data. Did it work? Did it not work? What did go well? And I'm not sure about anybody else, but I absolutely hate reflecting. And if I look at anything and do any type of reflection, everything's crap. Nothing has went well. And I always look at the poor side of it, whereas it's really hard for me to look at that positive thing. And sometimes you might have a student that is like that, where they're going, I just don't see anything good in my project. And they're always really trying to find things that's wrong with it rather than finding things that's an improvement of it. It's coming away from the whole bias end of things when we are developing both of these, and it's looking at how we can think outside the box. We'll always have a student that will have an opinion, and those will be the students that will have the voice, but it's getting the quieter student to have that voice as well and to think about everything else around that. And finally, it's the goal. So what's your goal? What's the student's goal? And what's the goal of the actual module or the unit that you're taking is so important. And it's looking at that, it's the reasoning behind it. Do you want that ordinary thinking where it's a quick response, it's a quick decision, it's a yes or no element? Whereas we're trying to get our students to think more of that critical thinking more of that, well, how can I develop this better? How am I going to use this in real life, that we're not getting that back from a student going, I'm never going to use this, and then being grumpy on a Monday morning going, no, never going to use it. So that's where I came up with this D.I.C.E framework. The whole idea behind the D.I.C.E framework is it allows students to integrate project-based learning. It allows them to develop those critical thinking skills. It allows them to develop those skills with AI, that we are being critical with it, that we know it's going to make mistakes. We know that we have to be ethically responsible, and our students don't be. And that's the thing that I don't know about anyone else, but this last couple of weeks I've been getting work that's totally AI produced, where staff are coming to me saying, this is AI written, what am I supposed to do? And it's getting them to change the mindset that we change the narrative. We use that student's work that maybe is AI produced to actually use it as a good thing and use it in the classroom and turn it around to develop those critical thinking skills. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to talk you through this PBL AI powered model of D.I.C.E, and then we're going to do a couple of workshops to give you a chance, and so that you're not continually listening to me, to give you a chance to see how you can apply this in the classroom. So there's 4 stages to the D.I.C.E framework. So the first one is define. So the whole idea behind define is we set problems, we set a problem, we set objectives, and this allows students to go ahead and understand what the problem is. It's not that they're thinking of, here's a real client at this stage. I would take the define in 2 stages. The first one would be give the student the problem, let them go away and think about, okay, this is everything that could go wrong with this. So an example I will use is we have loads of different projects within the classroom. And one of the projects was where we needed students to develop an app that would help them with work placements. So the whole idea behind this is we have a group of students that would go out on placements for a week, but some of them didn't have the confidence to go out and think about, well, who can I phone? How can I conduct those telephone calls? What do I need for my workshop? What do I need to go out into that placement? So we give the student the problem, and the problem was, the whole idea behind that was, hi. So the whole idea was to gather that information into the problem, and we split the group into 4 different groups. They all came up with something so different, and I'll go through an example of what they did do. The next stage of that, and what I would get at this stage is, and I will just share NotebookLM on this point. So I would be getting our students at this stage to use NotebookLM, and what they would all do. Just going to come out of Mentimeter. And what our students would all do on this front. So hopefully, I'm not sure if everyone has used, hopefully we've all heard of it at this stage. With our NotebookLM, I get all the students then to set up the NotebookLM, and I get them to create the new notebook. And what I have them working on is they all share this with each other within their groups. So just sharing it with each other and making each other the owner. But the main part that I get them here is down at notes. So I get them to add a note. So each stage they will go through, for example, define. And each of them will say, we'll have to brainstorm and show how they've actually come up with ideas to solve the problem, what they've thought about in terms of making this problem better. And this then is their evidence to pull everything together. And what I really like about NotebookLM is they can convert that source. So we may have a group of students that absolutely hate doing presentations, they hate making notes, they find it harder. And the nice thing about this is it'll create an audio overview of what the students' details are and of their notes. And that's a nice tool to put in for their evidence. So for example, they may have come up with design an app. They may have thought about the age group of learners. They also maybe have thought about potential employers that this could involve. And then they can convert that into a source, and they have that then as their PBL. And this then they can save a note to it, they can start typing, and they can share and add to it, rather than having it all on paper-based or working with different documents. Because I know my students, you give it to them this Friday, they will definitely not have it by the end of class, never mind the following Friday. So it keeps everything in place, and it's the student's responsibility. So it's putting it back onto the student to say, okay, this is your responsibility. I will check it, I will have access to it, but it's up to you to do it. You can have your briefing documents as well, and they can do a question and answering, which is really good. And again, the lovely podcast that we all love. We just need those voices to change at some stage. So that's an idea of where we can use it. So back to the D.I.C.E framework. So that's stage one of the define. The next stage is the investigate. So that's where students are collaborating using that AI tool. So using NotebookLM. They could use ChatGPT, they could use Perplexity. And hopefully the D.I.C.E framework is sharing on your screens. So the next stage then, and at each of these stages, I always get a student to question, what have you found out from using the AI tool? Did you use it responsibly? Have you learned anything different that maybe you didn't know before? Then we have the create, and the create is about developing those solutions, designing those solutions. So one of the groups of students, I'm not sure if anyone has used it, the PEO app or POE, I always get those two mixed up. And what they were able to do was set up a QR code, and the students were then able to ask the bots the question. So it is a really good tool to use. But there's other avenues you can set up, like your ChatGPT things as well. And the last stage is the evaluate. So it's assessing the effectiveness of their solution, looking at, is this actually going to be worth it? Can I roll this out to all students? Can it be used worldwide and not just within our own college or our own university? So that's where it's so important. And it's bringing in that real life, it's bringing in that real life solution that students can relate to. That one was where students were finding their replacement, and that was something that they could relate to. So without me having to speak anymore and to give you all an opportunity to say, okay, well, where can I apply this? I am going to get worksheet 1 just shared with you all. And the whole idea behind this worksheet is that it's a scenario and it's a problem. So I'll just share and I'll go into the chat. So what I have done with this worksheet is it'll give you an opportunity to view and this is the worst thing about working off one screen. I have done this into 4 steps. So the first step of the framework is, what's the problem or a goal you're addressing? Don't even think outside the classroom. This could be as simple as getting a group of teachers or lecturers to use AI. And that's what we're finding, that maybe our teachers are holding back from doing this and maybe don't want to do project-based learning, don't want to have the norm, don't want to think of it being normal, just want to stay in like our wee box. None of us like change. So what I want you to think about in this workshop, and we'll have a wee discussion, I'll give everyone 5 minutes on this. So what's the problem or goal that you would like to address? So is it that you would like more of your staff or more of your students using AI tools? who are the stakeholders that you would like this to be involved with? Is it the individuals? Is it your staff? Is it your team? Is it your group of learners? And why is this problem or goal so important that you need it to be addressed? The whole reason I've done this way is to let you see that this framework can actually be applied to anything. And it doesn't just have to be the classroom, it can be used with our teachers to implement something brand new. So then step 2 is our innovate. So brainstorming those potential solutions or approaches. So coming up with like 3 ideas. And this again, use it with students. It's getting them thinking, it's getting them to have that thought process. So what resources and tools might you use to support this? So could you draw on expertise from other organizations like Skill and Future that we could say, come to us and say, is there a chance that you would have any recommendations or tools that would support this idea for the group of learners? Then it's bringing that forward to the create stage and saying, okay, well, here's a solution I'd like to focus on, but it's getting the students then to be critical and to do the critical process and the critical analysis about why did you select this solution? What was the idea behind that? And they actually have to come up with 5 steps on how they would implement that solution. So it's not a case of, okay, I've come up with this solution and it's great and it's wonderful. They actually have to think about and developing those critical thinking skills. And the next stage then is the implement. So where they are actually bringing together and implementing that stage. So generally within that framework previously that I had shown you, implement and create were both brought together. But on this one, on this example, I've just pulled them out slightly for you. And the step 5 then is to evaluate. But it's not just evaluating ourselves and the work that we've done in terms, or the students evaluating themselves in terms of the work they've done. It's actually looking at bringing in the client, bringing in a real life client and asking them to measure how successful it was. And then is there any adjustments that we could make? So I'm going to give, hopefully everyone has received that. If not, I can put it into the chat. I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes to think on that and have a wee go. It could be any problem. And if you want to contribute after and let us know your solutions, that would be great as well. So I'll give everyone 5 minutes on that. And if you have any questions, please put them into the chat or feel free to turn your mic on.
Joanne, while everybody is filling in the worksheet, what has been one of your favorite or memorable applications of this framework till yet with your students?
It has been the students actually having that click moment. That group of students that I was talking about that had done the app, those students never stood up and presented. They are a group of SEN learners, so they have extreme learning difficulties, and being able to see them get up and present, I think that was and come through each of the stages, and it was the total excitement. They knew that they were getting a client, a real life client was going to see the work that they were doing, and it was being rolled out across the college. But when you see the passion for the students when they're looking through this, I think that's the big thing, and it's moving away from the norm. It's definitely, and it's not even getting the students to move away from the norm. Staff and teachers are worse. We are probably the worst people for change. None of us like it. And students are maybe easier adapters if we can bring it and show the excitement of what they can have from it. Is really important. But yeah, just seeing confidence and those skills that they maybe wouldn't have done previously.
Okay. Because I was working through the worksheet as well, is there any stage that you would recommend teachers or maybe somebody who's trying to fill it in that, okay, this is not the stage where you should be using AI alongside? Or would you be okay with that? Okay, we start off with we can use, or it's a very good approach to basically use AI from the defined stage.
I would be say use it from the start,
Okay.
and it gets them used to it. So I have developed a clear framework, and the whole idea behind the clear framework, and I will share it as well. The clear framework is that students question what the AI tool has actually given them, and that's where it's so important. It's developing those skills and making students realize that actually this isn't true, this mightn't work. So I would always say use it from the start, and even using it in the classroom with them to show them, okay, this is how it can be used, and it does make mistakes. So definitely from the start, I wouldn't shy away from it. But it's getting them to show you where you have used it. Some of them are so scared to actually say they've used it. Actually, that's probably one of the things where I was telling the students to use it, but they were kind of going, is she for real? That I was actually asking them to use AI to actually help them with the problem. So I don't think they actually believed that I was allowing them to do that.
Okay, so when you allow, because again, I do think so with educators, this is one of the top questions that at times they have in their mind that, okay, if you're allowing the use of AI, then are you also looking at the chat responses to have a look at that, okay, how they are actually talking with any AI, and in what way is it that you can guide them along the way?
Yeah, so that was one of the things with the whole prompt engineering, that we started off just basics and showing that you actually have to speak to it as a human, rather than just putting in one-word sentences. And that's what the students found as well when they were building the app, was that they find it that the more information they give, particularly in terms of location, they were finding, okay, well, how can they say this location is in Northern Ireland, but maybe they were actually saying it was somewhere else across the world. So that was a great example of where the students were actually realizing, oh, I do need to feed in as much information as possible on this.
Does anyone else also have any question or anything that they would like to ask Joanne? They can either unmute or they can put it in the chat, and then we can ask her. And you can also fill in the worksheet along the way, so you can assess and have a look at that, okay, in what way the worksheet or the model or the framework is basically applying, and in what way would you be able to apply it in your context? What would you do? What any changes that you would make, and what changes would you make? Because in everyone's context, again, our teaching levels, the use of resources, the number of students in the classrooms, definitely that impacts how we approach any integration of any framework. So do let us know. We would be interesting to listening to with respect to that, okay, how you would be applying this framework, what ideas come in your mind, and in what way can you apply these elements.
I have just one quick question, Joanne, that what do you recommend that from which age group we can use this, your DICE framework, AI-powered PBL DICE framework, which age group, from which grade level do you recommend?
This is set up that it can be used with all levels, just tailor it down slightly. Obviously, if we're using for anyone under the age of 14, it's thinking of making it easier for them. If we're thinking for anyone above the age of 14, it's just thinking of those ethical issues when we're using AI, and making sure like the guidelines, if they're allowed to use it over the age of 14. But no, absolutely, I would be using it in all classrooms from the age of 14 up. Because with everything we do now, it's so important that we do have that element of project-based learning, that they are integrating AI and they're developing these skills. Because so many of them will sit back and just go, someone else will do it for me. And it's those group skills, particularly if they're going out into the world of work, it's those skills about how they can develop them and think about them. I'll give another minute on that worksheet, and if anyone would like to share their ideas or share how they have come up with implementing it at the different stages. The whole idea around this just being general as well is that we can take it as teachers and lecturers, we can take it as businesses to implement this. And because AI is being so talked about and we're only in that, well, we're so much into that journey, it's how we can start to use it, the ethical reasons. So there's just one question in the chat. So is only one solution to implement more effective? If they decide to have, I would always keep it to one, because the end project would just be the one and they're presenting on one. But if you have a group of learners, or if you're using this with a group of staff that maybe you want to use more than one solution, absolutely go with more than one. If you're splitting, so that example that I had given was, I had split them into different groups and every student's group came up with a different example. So one came up with the app, another group of learners actually came up with OneNote. Another group of learners had actually developed the ChatGPT bot, and we had another group of learners just developed a worksheet. So one solution in the whole class will never work, but it'll work for just one particular group. So hopefully that answers everyone's questions. Yeah, Jerry, do you adapt the idea of the driving question to help students identify the problem? Yes, absolutely. If you can come up with a type of question or a driving question, particularly from a client. So that was one of the driving questions, was students can't find work placements or find work placements particularly difficult. And then that's where they went into finding and trying to define that problem and what was the issue around it. So yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions, or does anyone want to share their worksheets or share how maybe they've went about the whole implementation of this? I know no one likes being put on the spot, Anna. I know I definitely don't. If you want to even share them with me after, absolutely, and I can have a wee look with them if someone doesn't want to, if you don't want to share on the screen. But hopefully it gives you an idea, that first worksheet, of how you can break that whole framework down and how you can look at the potential of coming up with the brainstorming ideas and using it with students and totally adapt it. You can adapt those questions to use with the students, and you know your students better than, or your staff better than anyone. So it's important to look at, well, what stage might a student find it more difficult? And you'll have a group of students, if you're putting them into groups of 4, you'll have different students that'll take a different lead on different areas, and you'll have different strengths shining through. I think probably a big part of the difficult one is coming up with one solution or breaking the 3 ideas down into one. And I know, because I teach engineering and maths, I find that they go straight to that create stage. They actually completely miss the first 2 stages of it. And you find that a few students will do that. And that is, I didn't realize this, but it's all down to the type of learner. Where they'll actually go through and be like, I know how I'm solving this problem. I don't need to do all that waffly research behind it. So that's where it's really important to actually get, even at each stage, get your students to present what they've actually done at each stage. And I find that really important. It's keeping them on track, that they don't jump straight to that creation stage of it. So we have another worksheet, and this time it's thinking more about your students. So, but I've actually given a scenario this time, and I'm not sure, would it be an idea to even put us into groups can we do that? If we can't, it doesn't. Thank you. I'll just talk you through this. And Dana Maria, I see you have a question in there and I'll answer it shortly. So with this scenario, it's a group challenge that you could give in your classroom. So your team is part of a school project and you want to create a student-friendly study area in your school. The challenge is to design a space that improves productivity, encourages collaboration, and drives the diverse needs of students. So you need to balance functionality, comfort, and limit the resources to create practical, engaging solution. So this is the type of thing I would give to my students. I would give them that scenario. We would then go through each of these stages and breaking it down. Again, depending on how your group of learners will depend on how you break this down. So the first one is working as a group to apply the framework to the scenario, and they're going to complete the following steps. So for example, the define stage, what's the main challenge that they actually see from the scenario? And what's the outcomes that they're aiming for? What would they like to see in this? And then they present this. And in doing so, they're presenting to the rest of the class, but they're also then getting feedback from the rest of the class on their project. And this will happen at each stage where they do get feedback from their peers. So then step 2 is where they're innovate. So they're doing their brainstorming. They have to come up with at least 3 ideas as a group. It may not work. You may find that you'll have a group of students that will struggle with 3 ideas. So judge that based on your students. I just go with 3 as a general rule of thumb. Then you're thinking of the create stage. So again, on stage 2, they present to the class, they present to their client at this stage as well. So if you have a real life client, it's really good because then they can actually relate it to someone and they can also give them feedback. Step 3 then is the create. So they're thinking of how can I achieve this actual task? How can I achieve my idea? What do I need to do and how can I make it? Which idea is the most feasible to actually bring forward to the innovate stage? Then we have the implement stage. So this is where they're looking at the resources, their timeline needed. So coming up with a plan to say, okay, I'm going to implement this. This is what it'll look like. This is how much money we need. So it's bringing in a lot of those curriculum areas. And then the final stage, and again, they would present that to their client. They would present it to their peers for feedback. And the final stage in that is, how will you measure success? So again, it's this reflection. How can you see that this was successful? What feedback loops have you established as a student in terms of, did you know something now that you didn't know at the start of this project? And again, this is where they'll go into NotebookLM and feed all this information in. So it's going back to, and I'm going to share NotebookLM again. So it's gone back to the NotebookLM that the group of students have, and it's this time adding in their extra information. So they may have found new sources. So they may have found a YouTube source, or they may have found a website that they find really interesting, and it's embedding that all in so that when the students at each stage that they do come to present this overall, they can have this all ready to go. But in this, if they feel that they want to share this with their client, or if they want to share it with their peers in the class, they can do for feedback. And that's where that's where I really like NotebookLM, because it's constantly building and you're constantly developing those different areas with students. And they can do out different documents. So what they may find, for example, if they're going to create a study guide, what they may want to do is build in all their information and create that study guide based on the information that they have gathered. They may have a problem that they have to come up with a set of instructions to use a particular part within the study area in school, and this could be part of their study guide, could be within that. So I'll give everybody a few minutes. I am conscious of time, so we will run over the 12 o'clock. But I'll give everyone a few minutes to have a wee think about that. And I'll just answer a few questions that was there. Dara Maria, yep. So beyond the scaffolding, yes, there's aspect of peer assessment, absolutely. So at each of the stages, it's really important for peer assessment and looking at learning from each other. None of us like, what I actually found on this was students had a fear of giving bad feedback. And this is where I introduced the whole idea was you have two good, it's like 2 stars and a wish, where the students had to give 2 good feedback information and they had to give 1 feedback for improvement. And that's where it was so important. And it did build on that. And by the end of it, we were noticing the confidence changing. And that's where it's good for the learners, so that they're thinking of, oh, okay, well, they're telling me something to improve on. So it was getting them into what's the difference in your peers telling you an area to improve, and me as the teacher saying you need to improve on this area. So that was, yeah, absolutely such an important part in that. So hopefully these 2 workshops give you an idea of how to, 1, break it down maybe with a group of staff or lectures, and the second one is how you can actually use it with your students on that. And please, if there's any questions, pop them into the chat. Jerry, great question, and thank you for your feedback. No, I actually haven't thought of that, but yeah, absolutely, it's something to consider. I suppose I'm always using the NotebookLM with the students, so it's definitely something to consider. So thank you. Yeah, so time frame for the framework, it really depends. We generally run projects from, great, Jerry, thank you. We generally run frameworks from 4 weeks to 8 weeks to 12-week projects. It's all on your learners. It's thinking of the project and thinking how your learners can work on that. That project that the group of students worked on, they had 4 weeks and they were in class for 2 hours a week. So it is, a lot of it is down to what the students do outside the classroom. And that's a really big thing. It's getting them to think about the teamwork is a big element, because if a student didn't actually go and do the work outside the classroom, they came back in and they were all asking as a group, well, what did you do and what did you do? So it was actually putting everybody under pressure to make sure that they did do it outside the class time. But you can pull that particular framework out to whatever duration. If you think you'll find students might need longer on one section than the other. I find the define stage took forever because someone went down a complete rabbit hole on that one. So I'll give everybody a few minutes because I am just conscious of the time and I know it's a Saturday and everyone's.
Joanne, I do have one more question. What are the potential challenges that any educator who's planning to apply this framework within their classrooms, how is it that they'll go ahead and say that, okay, what potential challenges should we think of?
The potential is mindset. That's definitely the first thing. It's changing that mindset from the norm and saying, this is what you can do. I wouldn't say go straight in and do a massive project first. I would take it as a mini step and even take a small maths question, like doing area, and apply it to doing an area question. So started off small and building the students' confidence. So that was an example. I didn't go straight in with that particular project, but what I did do was I took a maths question and I used that whole framework around that to say, this is the idea that we're going to be working on for a bigger project. It's definitely mindset, and it's how you group the students, and it's looking at bringing all the different students together with different learning styles, and even looking at who works well together, who would be a leader, and getting them to do the type of things that they like and they don't like would be a massive part of that. But definitely starting small. But mindset is massive. For us,
It has
never
been
mind
actually
first.
really interesting to see this element across different education levels, and also across the type of institution that one is in. And I think so that has to do with access to resources, what degree program they're in, what is required, how much grade factors into that, and in what way then they are incorporating. Because at certain points, I get to talk to a group of educators, and then they're like, us students are a little hesitant about AI integration. And then looking at my own context, I do know that my students, because I teach at the university level, and they have active access to it, and they are using it for all of them. And then I'm really, it's really interesting to see this across the board, that okay, in some cases, as Deri Maria says, that okay, parents, and within K-12, that's also one of the challenges. Then there's going to be the element of administrators, and because at certain points they're also thinking about banning the incorporation of AI within classrooms, or even in some cases that okay, don't bring the cell phone to the classroom or any active technology. So it's interesting to see that okay, how across the board things are not uniform.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not. And even from a school that's maybe or a university that's 5 minutes down the road from us all is completely different as well. And none of us, I think that's the thing, none of us are doing anything that's the same. And that's where if we could even start to get things streamlined, it would be a lot easier. And then maybe the challenges wouldn't be as difficult for us. Folks, have we any questions on anything at this stage? I am conscious I had one more worksheet, which was to do with reflection. But if you can just give me 5 minutes and then we'll finish up after that. That's the first time ever I've actually run a workshop over time. So the third worksheet is just for students again, and it's the reflection stage, I suppose. It's letting them look at, well, what did they learn from using this framework? What challenges did they face in the whole process? And then what was their key takeaways? So these would be the questions I would be getting students to use to reflect on. And it's thinking of the challenges and the key takeaways that they can take from using that and what they can build on from the future. And then if you're doing maybe more than one project, the nice thing about this is that they could come back to projects later on and think about, okay, how can I improve on what I've done previously, which is a big thing on that. Okay, and I think we just have feedback form. Folks, if there is
Yes,
any
I am
questions.
sharing that. And okay.
Folks,
Let
just to say
me
as well, thank you
just
very much for the opportunity to hear about the framework, and hopefully it's give you some food for thought to apply it. Do reach out if there's anything at all that I can help with. And there is a feedback form. I will be running another session on this in March on applications of the D.I.C.E framework in more examples. So I'll just hand back over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. This was a very insightful session. Because again, with respect to when it comes to integration of AI, a lot of us are at times really very, we want to think about what are the effective ways, how is it that we can start off small and then scale it, learn along the way. And I feel that your framework is practical, give students give students the space to experiment, and then not only at the student's end but also for the educator there is also the space so that okay they can see and then customize it with respect to how they can apply it within their classrooms, within their settings. uh, and this is what I do think, so good frameworks and good technologies and strategies are all about that there is a lot of space for customization within them. So I'm really very grateful for your session. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and along with that, your experiences with us. Your worksheets are really very amazing. With respect that, okay, they walk us through the different steps of the framework and helps not only as educators see, but also that, okay, how our students would be using it. And then, okay, then questions in the mind, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what my students could be doing. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to our amazing audience, not only for the questions, but also, again, as Joanne says, for investing in their professional development on a Saturday. We will be sending certificates of participation to all of the attendees once you fill in the Google form. And also, I do want to let all of you know, I have shared the Skilling Future LinkedIn page link. So if you follow us, you'll get to see what the rest of our team is also working on along the way. And in the upcoming week, same time on Saturday, we have another session. You can register for it. That is going to be by Nadine Baki. And it is also going to be about, again, integration, how we can transform learning with STREAM and PBL. So again, you can build on the ideas that you have taken from here and then see that, okay, what is it that you can work for your, what can work for your setting, your context. Again, we can definitely promise you one thing, that it is going to be a session that's going to be filled with very interesting and very good insights, practical insights that can work for you. Again, thank you so very much to each and every one of you who has joined us for today's session. And again, thank you so much, Joanne, for your amazing session.
Thank you, everyone.
I am going to share again the link for the form. We will be sharing we will be emailing you the certificates and definitely the recording as well. If you have any questions along the way about the future sessions, today's session, or anything else along the way, you can ask us. We are here.
That's it. Thank you so much, everyone from Skilling Future, and we would like to have you in our future sessions as well. Please do bring your colleagues. There is a lot more we'll be unveiling in our upcoming Saturdays. So thank you so much, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and good night wherever you are. Thank you so much. We are signing out. Thank you. Bye bye.